Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers, and I'm looking at a book which is relevant to common law practitioners in particular and those who are employment lawyers either at tribunal level or just advising or elsewhere. It's from Jordan's. It's an 8th edition of a well-known book. It's this one here. It's called The Law of Termination of Employment, and it's written by Professor Robert Upex and Dr. Stephen Hardy. That's the side and there's the back of it. Very much part of the Jordan stable of publications. You've got paragraph numbering at the sides, you've got useful footnotes, a lot of detail in what is actually not a very big book. It's under 500 pages long. There's the index at the back there, and I found it extremely helpful because you've got a lot of detail, but it will give you everything I think you need, especially when you've got the client in your chambers or firm and you need some information quite quickly. Those are the cases that are listed. There are a lot of them, and do read both the preface and the introduction, because Professor Upex has now got some help in the shape of Dr. Hardy to assist him. Now the actual details of this book we've put on the web and in the journals, and we've given it the title Similar Employment Issues Recurring Even After 30 Years. And that really comes from the comments made by the authors. What we're saying is that it's nearly 30 years since Upex produced the first edition of this excellent perennial on the rules governing termination of employment. Obviously the main area of it is dismissal, which is the bulk in the middle of the book, but it's about much wider than that because it is actually looking at termination. This year, of course, he's been joined by Hardy, and he's repeating how striking it is that after 3 decades the same sorts of issues recur despite the extensive changes in the law over the same period. That's legislation, of course, mainly. And as we know, within the courts and tribunals, it's the issue of whether a person is or is not is employed or is actually self-employed, which is the and remains the most troubling for many of the matters to be looked at. And the 8th edition sets out to re-evaluate the legislative landscape surrounding the law on dismissal with the repeal of the statutory, disciplinary and grievance procedures. We would agree, of course, with the authors that unfair dismissal continues to reinvent itself. Of course, the same could be said of many other areas of law because of the habit we have as barristers of sort of nitpicking, or as is more customarily described, having a fine intellectual grasp of the law. Now the beauty of this work, I think, is for the practitioner remains the extensive level of detail that you've got in a relatively slim volume. You haven't got to lug around the big loose leaf stuff. And there are some very useful cases that have been looked at, and also a continuing commentary on the controversy concerning the 2006 TUPE regulations. We feel that one of the greatest assets of the new edition are the key case law issues selected by the authors. That includes the Court of Appeal decision in Ajum, and obviously during the recent current economic difficulties, the elements of calculation and pension losses are also considered, and I think will be of help if you're actually in some form of contentious litigation. The aim of the book remains the same, which is to consider the main causes of action available on termination. And obviously we've also got the obviously full coverage of the Employment Rights Act 1996. It does remain a cure-all, I think, this book, as a statement for practitioners and human resource managers, and it is of course of wider application than just lawyers. I'd like to thank the authors very much, and Jordan's, for producing this new edition. I think it's very, very useful, and I think it's a fair statement of where we are in this particular area of law as a shorter volume. So thank you to all concerned. Bye bye.